you ready to move on to the next call?
Yes.
All right, let's talk to Jeremy in Maryland. Jeremy, you're live with Eric and V.
Hello.
Hello.
So what I wanted to talk about is I am not convinced that it is morally okay to have children. Bringing someone into existence is, one of the biggest decisions you can possibly make on behalf of another person. And to make such a big decision on behalf of someone else without their consent, I don't know. That strikes me as not a particularly moral thing. But it seems like most of the planet disagrees with me, so I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts.
Well, I've had this has been a pet topic of mine since way before I started talking about atheist stuff online. I remember in Columbus, Ohio, shout out to the philosophy meetup group that I would hang out with every other week at the library. We would have arguments about this kind of thing all the time. And yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I really do. I think that the concept, if the concept of taking away existence from somebody is something that we place so much weight on, right? Like, you cannot do that without someone's consent. Even with their consent, it's like a huge deal that's full of tension, right? Like, helping somebody end their own life because of a chronic illness or something like that is already something that is so hotly debated. And so I think that pretending that taking away existence is this huge deal that needs this level of care and concern and regulation, where giving's existence is somehow like, oh, it just happens, like it's just a thing, then to me that makes it weird. To pretend that one side of that coin is so heavy, but the other one is kind of, oh, well, it just happens when it happens, and, you got to deal with it. So yeah, I don't know. I think it definitely requires a little bit more serious conversation than I think it has had. And I know a lot of people who are really interesting in and willing to have these kinds of conversations in other areas be like right away, no, that's a stupid idea. I'm never talking about that. You're stupid if you believe it.
Well, I think that a lot of people conflate this idea that, not wanting to have kids or talking about not having kids makes you anti-kid.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. Like, personally for me, I have a lot of health issues that go back in my family that I don't want to give it to a child. That said, I was raised by an adoptive parent, and I can't tell you how meaningful that is to me, that I was able to receive the love and support of somebody who did not give birth to me. And I'm all for that, right? I'm definitely pro, loving people, and if you have it in you to want to adopt and raise a child, I think that I would encourage, people to adopt rather than to have more children. But the idea of having children in the first place being a moral negative.
Well, that's the thing. Like, at the most, I could say that it's net neutral and it's an amoral action. But to then go as far to the other side and say that it's a requirement for morality, to me, is just as out there, or should be treated as just as out there, as saying it's an immoral thing.
Well, I don't know. I think it's super context dependent.
Right, but that's the thing. Like, I'm even seeing in the chat right now, people are like, well, what if the next kid that gets born cures cancer? It would be immoral not to have that kid. But okay, well, what if the next kid that's born turns into the next Hitler? It would be immoral to have that kid. Like, that doesn't really prove a point one way or the other.
That's whataboutism.
Yeah.
And whataboutism doesn't get us anywhere. If you are talking about the individual, right? If bringing a life into existence that's capable of suffering is something that you feel is immoral, because
not just capable of suffering, guaranteed to be uncomfortable and or suffer for most of its life.
I mean, it's understandable. That said, I don't think that is something that I would want to push onto others as much as I would want to just say about myself, you know, it's not something I would legislate, and it's not something that I
No,
would,
by no means.
it's not something I would judge someone for. One of our dearest friends just had the most adorable friggin' baby, and we love that baby, and we don't think there's anything immoral about that. It's just
if we were to take a specific moral philosophical concept of requiring consent to its farthest conclusion, which is, again, what philosophy likes to do a lot of the time, right? Like skepticism, we say we're skeptics. If you take skepticism to its like farthest conclusion, you get solipsism, right? We're not advocating for that, even though we agree with skepticism as a general concept. So in the same way, if we take the philosophy of consent to its farthest implication and its most out there result, it would be, I think, consistent to say that it would be immoral to cause someone to exist without their consent. But again, that is philosophy being pushed into these fun, far-reaching, maybe not very practical applications. So on the one hand, absolutely agree with you, honestly. If we were to do that and go down that path, philosophically it would make sense. Does that mean that that's how we should actually run things? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I in my brain, I wind up just shifting over to, you should adopt, but that's not a response to the question. So, yeah.
What are your thoughts, Jeremy?
I mean, I do like the comparison to, say, ending someone's existence, just because those are the two, in my opinion, those are the two biggest things you can do. You can cause someone to exist, or you can end someone's existence. You cannot possibly affect another person more than that. So given that, you don't have to like philosophically take this to any kind of extreme to say that you would be opposed to ending someone's existence without their consent. I don't know. It kind of seems to me bringing someone into existence also doesn't require a big extreme, but
that's a really good point as well.
If everyone stopped having children, so I'm not advocating that everyone stop having children.
Yeah.
Right. Or bear the philosophical guilt of having a kid.
Just do your best to mitigate the suffering that they could have by giving them a life full of care and love and attention and support, and encourage them to do the same.
Yeah.
You know?
I think.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys very much.
That was an awesome question, Jeremy. Thank you for calling.
All right. Well,
no worries. Okay. So, my goodness, we've got some really cool callers.
We really do.
I think I want to talk to Cindy in Missouri.
Oh, throw me a curveball. Okay.
I'm totally. Is that the one you didn't? Okay. While we prep up for Cindy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we should put up a poll and ask people throughout the week what they think about natalism and anti-natalist views.
Well, yes, I fully agree. That will be the poll for the clip. One thing, just to throw this out there, if you're noticing that the polls are coming out at weird times, that's because YouTube's scheduling a poll feature is not working right now. So it'll pop it up on my end, but nobody sees it, nobody votes because it's not visible. So I have to go in and manually add them, which is fine. But if they're a little bit sporadic until YouTube works that bug out, then
we're trying our best.
Right. But yeah, I absolutely would be interested to hear what you guys think about that particular issue, because it can spur that, I don't know if we're supposed to talk about this or have that thought, because it attacks, again, one of those fundamental emotional principles of we must procreate. Like, that's a thing we have to do to survive.
It's funny. I find that when that kind of conversation happens in person, the anti-natalist winds up getting really, really, really awkward. And so maybe it's best that we do have these conversations online so you can have them fleshed out at least.
Before you make that initial call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're here for. So we're glad you called.